From archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 187. Catumaṭṭa-Jātaka. Sit and sing, etc. This story the master told while staying at Jetavana monastery, about an old brother. Once, we are told, two of the chief disciples were sitting together, questioning and answering. When up came old brother, and made a third. Taking a seat, he said, I have a question too, sirs, which I should like to ask you. And if you have any difficulty, you may put it to me. The elders were disgusted. They rose up and left him. The congregation who listened to the discourse of the elders, after the meeting broke up, came to the master. He asked what brought them there untimely, and they told him what had happened. He replied, This is not the first time, brethren, that Sāriputra and Moggallana have been disgusted with this man, and left him without a word. It was just the same in olden days. And he proceeded to tell a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, the Bodhisattva became a tree fairy that lived in a forest. Two young geese flew down from Mount Sīhacamma-Jātaka and perched upon this tree. They flew about in search of food, returned there again, and after resting flew back to their mountain home. As time went on and on, the fairy struck up a friendship with them. Coming and going, they were great friends, and used to talk of righteousness to one another before they parted. It happened one day as the birds sat on the treetop, talking with the Bodhisattva, that a jackal, halting at the foot of the tree, addressed the young geese in the words of the following stanza. Sit and sing upon the tree. If in private you would be. Sit upon the ground, and sing. Verses to the beast's own king. Filled with disgust, the young geese took wing and flew back to Sīhacamma-Jātaka. When they were gone, the Bodhisattva repeated the second stanza for the jackal's benefit. Fair wing here to fair wing sings. God to God sweet talk brings. Perfect beauty, you must then. Back into your hole again. When the master had ended this discourse, he identified the birth. In those times the old man was the jackal, Sāriputra, and Moggallana the two young geese, and I myself was the tree fairy. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 188. Sīhakoṭṭhuka-Jātaka. Lion's claws and lion's paws, etc. This is a story told by the master while at Jetavana monastery, about Khuddaka. They say that Khuddaka one day hearing a number of wise brethren preaching, desired to preach himself. All the rest is like the circumstances given in a previous tale. This time again the master on hearing of it said, Not this once only has Khuddaka been shown up for what he was worth by means of his own voice. The very same thing happened before. And he told a story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, the Bodhisattva was a lion in the Himalaya mountains, and he had a cub by a she-jackal who mated with him. The cub was just like his sire in toes, claws, mane, color, figure, all these. But in voice he was like his mother. One day, after a shower of rain, all the lions were gamboling together and roaring. The cub thought he would like to roar too, and yelped like a jackal. On hearing which all the lions fell silent at once. Another cub of the same sire, own brother of this one, heard the sound, and said, Father, the lion is like us in color and everything except in voice. Who's he? In asking which question he repeated the first stanza. Lion's claws and lion's paws. Lion's feet to stand upon. But the bellow of this fellow sounds not like a lion's son. In answer the Bodhisattva said, It's your brother, the jackal's cub. Like me in form, but in voice like his mother. Then he gave a word of advice to the other cub, My dear son, as long as you live here keep a quiet tongue in your head. If you give tongue again, they'll all find out that you are a jackal. To drive the advice home he repeated the second stanza. All will see what kind you be. If you yelp as once before. So don't try it, but keep quiet. Yours is not a lion's roar. After this advice the creature never again so much as tried to roar. When the master had finished this discourse, he identified the birth. In those days Khuddaka was the jackal, Rahul was the brother cub, and the king of beasts was I myself. Source: adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 189. Sīhacamma-Jātaka. Nor lion, nor tiger I see, etc. This story, like the last, was about Khuddaka, told by the master in Jataka monastery. This time he wanted to intone. The master, on hearing of it, told the following story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a farmer's family, and when he grew up he got a livelihood by tillage. At the same time there was a merchant who used to go about hawking goods, which a donkey carried for him. Wherever he went, he used to take his bundle off the ass, and throw a lion skin over him, and then turn him loose in the rice and barley fields. When the watchmen saw this creature, they imagined him to be a lion, and so dared not come near him. One day this hawker stopped at a certain village, and while he was getting his own breakfast cooked, he turned the ass loose in a barley field with the lion skin on. The watchmen thought it was a lion, and dared not come near, but fled home and gave the alarm. All the villagers armed themselves, and hurried to the field, shouting and blowing on conchs and beating drums. The ass was frightened out of his wits, and gave a hee-haw. Then the Bodhisattva, seeing that it was a donkey, repeated the first stanza. Nor lion nor tiger I see. Not even a leopard is he. But a donkey, the miserable old one, with a lion skin over his back. As soon as the villagers learnt that it was only an ass, they beat it with sticks till they broke his bones, and then went off with the lion skin. When the merchant appeared, and found that his ass had come to grief, he repeated the second stanza. The donkey, if he had been wise, might long the green barley have eaten. A lion skin was his disguise. But he gave a hee-haw, and got beaten. As he was in the act of uttering these words, the ass expired. The merchant left him, and went his way. After this discourse was ended, the master identified the birth. At that time Khuddaka was the ass, and the wise farmer was I myself. Source: adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 190. Sīlānisaṁsa-Jātaka. See the fruit of sacrifice, etc. This story the master told while staying in Jataka monastery, about a believing layman. This was a faithful, pious soul, an elect disciple. One evening, on his way to Jataka monastery, he came to the bank of the river Asairavati, when the ferrymen had pulled up their boat on the shore in order to attend service. As no boat could be seen at the landing stage, and our friend's mind being full of delightful thoughts of the Buddha, he walked on the river. His feet did not sink below the water. He got as far as mid-river walking as though he were on dry land. But there he noticed the waves. Then his ecstasy subsided, and his feet began to sink. Again he strung himself up to high tension, and walked on over the water. So he arrived at Jataka monastery, greeted the master, and took a seat on one side. The master entered into conversation with him pleasantly. "I hope, good layman," said he, "you had no mishap on your way." "Oh, sir," he replied, "on my way I was so absorbed in thoughts of the Buddha that I set foot upon the river. But I walked over it as though it had been dry ground." "Ah, friend layman," said the master, "you are not the only one who has kept safe by remembering the virtues of the Buddha. In olden days pious laymen have been shipwrecked in mid-ocean, and saved themselves by remembering the Buddha's virtues." Then, at the man's request, he told an old world tale. Once upon a time, in the days when Kashyapa was supreme Buddha, a disciple, who had entered on the paths, took passage on board ship in company with a barber of some considerable property. The barber's wife had given him in charge of our friend, to look after him in better and in worse. A week later, the ship was wrecked in mid-ocean. These two persons clinging to one plank were thrown up on an island. There the barber killed some birds, and cooked them, offering a share of his meal to the lay disciple. "No, thank you," said he, "I have had enough." He was thinking to himself, "In this place there is no help for us except the 3 jewels, and so he thought upon the blessings of the 3 jewels. As he thought and thought, a serpent king who had been born in that small island changed his own body to the shape of a great ship. The ship was filled with the 7 kinds of precious things. A spirit of the sea was the helmsman. The 3 masts were made of sapphire, the anchor of gold, the ropes of silver, and the planks were golden. The sea spirit stood on board, crying, "Any passengers for India?" The lay disciple said, "Yes, that's where we are bound for." "In with you then, on board with you." He went aboard, and wanted to call his friend the barber. "You may come," says the helmsman, "but not he." "Why not?" "He is not a man of holy life, that's why," said the other. "I brought this ship for you, not for him." "Very well. The gifts I have given, the virtues I have practiced, the powers I have developed, I give him the fruit of all of them." "I thank you, master," said the barber. "Now," said the sea spirit, "I can take you aboard." So he conveyed them both over sea, and sailed upstream to Benares. There, by his power, he created a store of wealth for both of them, and spoke to them thus: "Keep company with the wise and good." If this barber had not been in company with this pious layman, he would have perished in the midst of the deep. Then he uttered these verses in praise of good company. "See the fruit of sacrifice, virtue, and piety. A serpent in ship shape conveys the good man over the sea. Make friendship only with the good, and keep good company." Friends with the good, this barber could his home in safety see. Thus did the spirit of the sea hold on, poised in mid-air. Finally he went to his own dwelling, taking the serpent king along with him. The master, after finishing this discourse, explained the truths and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths the pious layman entered on the fruit of the second path. On that occasion the converted lay disciple attained nirvana. Saraputra was the serpent king, and the sea spirit was I myself. Source: adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. Jataka number 191. Khuddaka. Even a broken bowstring, etc. This story the master told while living in Jetavana monastery, about temptation arising from a former wife. The circumstances will be explained in the 8th book, in the Indriya Jataka. Then the master said to this brother, "That is a woman who does you harm. In former times, too, she put you to the blush before the king and his whole court, and gave you good reason to leave your home." And he told an old world tale. Once upon a time, when King Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born of his chief queen. He came of age, and his father passed away. And then he became king and ruled in righteousness. The Bodhisattva had a priest named Khuddaka, and this Khuddaka had an old Brahmin woman to wife. The king gave the Brahmin a horse accoutred with all its ornamental dresses, and he mounted the horse and went to wait upon the king. As he rode along on the back of his richly saddle-clothed horse, the people on this side and that were loud in its praise. "See that fine horse!" they cried. "What a beauty!" When he came home again, he went into his mansion and told his wife. "Good wife," said he, "our horse is passing fine. Right and left the people are all speaking in praise of it." Now his wife was no better than she should be, and full of deceit. So she made reply to him thus: "Ah, husband, you do not know in which lies the beauty of this horse. It is all in his fine ornamental dresses. Now if you would make yourself fine like the horse, put his ornamental dresses on yourself and go down into the street, prancing along horse fashion. You will see the king, and he will praise you, and all the people will praise you. This fool of a Brahmin listened to it all, but did not know what she purposed. So he believed her, and did as she had said. All that saw him laughed aloud. "There goes a fine teacher," said they all. And the king cried shame on him. "Why, my teacher," said he, "are you all right? Are you crazy?" At this the Brahmin thought that he must have behaved wrongly, and he was ashamed. So he was angry with his wife, and made haste home, saying to himself, "The woman has shamed me before the king and all his army. I will chastise her and turn her out of doors." But the crafty woman found out that he had come home in anger. She stole a march on him, and departed by a side door, and made her way to the palace, where she stayed 4 or 5 days. When the king heard of it, he sent for his priest, and said to him, "My teacher, all womankind are full of faults. You should forgive this lady." And with intent to make him forgive he uttered the first stanza. Even a broken bowstring can be mended and made whole. Forgive your wife, and cherish not this anger in your soul. Hearing this, Khuddaka uttered the second. While there is bark and workmen too, it is easy to buy bowstrings new. Another wife I will procure. I've had enough of this one, sure. So saying, he sent her away, and took him another Brahmin woman to wife. The master, after finishing this discourse, explained the truths and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths the tempted brother was established in the fruit of the first path. On that occasion the former wife was the same, Khuddaka was the tempted brother, and I was the king of Benares.